only part of her is there, because
only part of her. I was going to ask if it was her whole body, because
they do that.
It's kind of morbid that they spread them around.
My computer Italy wanted her head.
Her head? Yeah. It's her head that's in. Oh my. That is pretty morbid.
It's terrible.
I've often wondered and joked, like, if these saints ever come back, and like, you know, I mean, I think that Leonard called them the incorruptibles. It's physical immortality, Catholic style, that they're waiting for the return of Jesus to then raise them from the dead, but their bodies are here and preserved. And I think, wow, they're going to be mad when they wake up and their body parts are missing. So Heike, welcome back.
My computer went out, so sorry.
That's all right. We stopped the recording, so I think you need to restart the recording.
I did restart it.
Oh, you did? Okay.
That's what happened. I thought I plugged it in. Okay, so you started talking about it, I guess.
Yeah, I was asking if anyone here had any experience or had seen any of the incorruptible saints and their bodies, and Peace was sharing that Saint Mother of Cabrini, Mother Cabrini's head is at a nearby church.
Her body is there. Her head went to Italy.
Oh, okay. Excuse me, I had it backwards. Okay. So, well, maybe you can go and share with us another time about your experience with that, with visiting her headless body.
I've been talking about it, but I never have gotten there yet.
Well, so this ability to actually keep the physical body intact to the point that they still have eyelids, even after 900 years. They have fingernails, and there is a few photos here in this book. And usually what the Catholic Church does, if they don't cut the relics off, like you were sharing about, which is a dreadful practice. And there's one story that one saint actually dissolved the body into flowers when they did that, when they wanted to do it. So he did not want his body to be chopped to pieces. Obviously, they still do have a connection with their physical body, and there's many of them. You wouldn't believe, the whole book is full of stories of actual incorrupt bodies, and they are in shrines, in caskets, and through glass you can actually visit them. So Leonard sent us on this trip to Italy, because Italian churches have quite a few of them, to find out what are actually the practices that the saints, these Catholic saints, are doing, so that their body keeps the body stays there just the way it was. It shriveled up. But as I said, they might have a connection with it, because some of the bodies still smell of roses. There is actually the Holy Ursula, she smells of roses. And there is a story of two saints. One saint goes and visits another, but one in the body. And when she gets there, she bends down to kiss the feet of the saint, and the saint, actually the dead body, raises his legs up so that she doesn't have to bend down to her. So it's obviously that they still have a connection with it. And there is a few of these saints that when you go to their presence, that they actually bless you, or that there's healing happening. So to some of the churches, like their birthdays or special celebrations, they're actually bringing a lot of people there to benefit from the energy that these incorruptibles are sending out. So the Padre Pio, he had also the marks of Christ on his body. His body is actually also still intact after a few decades after his passing. And I think it was true also for Yogananda, that his body stayed a long time. So coming to the practices, many of them were actually monks that practiced very severe spiritual purification practices. Most of them vegetarian, and singing and devotion. And I also studied recently, I've been reading a lot. So, I mean, after Leonard left, so what do I do now? I used to just follow along and, you know, listen to the stories he was telling and being inspired by the books he gave me. But now I think I have to, so that's one of the things I have to do for myself, is to keep searching and looking, where do I want to go with my life? And, you know, and especially, you know, now that he decided to leave this body behind, is it really true that we are physically immortal, or that we have the potential? And it's not to say, oh, well, too bad or whatever, but we really have to have a scientific approach also about our abilities. And so that's what I love about Rudolf Steiner's philosophy. He takes it really serious in not just the philosophy. And so in 2 weeks on Leonard's birthday, we will actually explore the 3 steps of physical immortality. And some of you will be there again. You know, the philosophy of physical immortality, the psychology, and the physiology. So all these incorruptibles, they were actually usually totally devoted to loving God. And that's also what Annalise Garin says. The first thing is that pure love for this all being. And it's not a person that we are loving, but it's that the great power, the energy, however we call that. And so these saints, I mean, the story that I just want to tell you that I love most, and we visited him actually in Italy. So the story goes that after his passing, I mean, the people beforehand don't know that, I have to let somebody in, that their body is going to be incorrupt. I mean, usually they put them in the ground, often in earth that they expect the body to decay. And so with this one saint, they put him into a casket in the church, and they kept hearing somebody singing while they were having mass, or, you know, and but they didn't think, they were just wondering, where is that voice coming from? And so after 30 years, they wanted to relocate his body to another place, and they took him out of the shrine, and he was actually sitting in there kneeling with folded hands. So he'd been there with his physical body connected and singing hymns to the glory of God. And so he loved the physical universe obviously so much that he kept reconnecting with his body, and obviously being able to come and go, so that he could chant and sing and praise the universe, praise God. So there's many of these stories in this, and it's a real inspiration. And when we explore physical immortality, the first thing also is that we become real human beings. And Leonard always talked about that too, so that we become pure. So the purification has to get us pure, but that means that we also have to get our emotions pure and our whole being. And obviously these Catholic saints that are described in those books, they had a certain kind of purity that we can, when we listen to those stories, that can inspire us. So that's for the incorruptibles.
Thank you.
Thank you, Heike. Peace, did you want to speak about Boganathar and who he is and how that plays into all of this?
Yes. So Boganathar, when I first, my background, I come from a background of studying traditional Chinese medicine and the healing arts, Taoist healing arts, and energy medicine and anatomy and physiology of energy. And when I first met Leonard and started hearing about these yogis and Babaji and the Kriya Yoga tradition, I had this strong hunch, this strong sense that there was a connection here. So I was reading the book, I believe it's called the 108 Kriya Yoga Tradition, put out by someone, I think his name is Govinda, and through the Self-Realization Fellowship, that kind of institutionalized version of Kriya Yoga. And then I read about Boganathar. So I took some simple notes to make this very short, but basically Boganathar, and he also is known as Bogar or Bo Yang, he was the guru of Babaji. Babaji's guru. So this was new for me. And initiated by Kalangi Nathar, the eternal youth, into Jnana Yoga, the supreme self-knowledge. So Kalangi Nathar, born in Benares, attained the immortal state of Sarupa Samadhi at age 315, and China was the center of his activities. So Sarupa Samadhi, I asked John, or I asked on the Facebook group, and John added that it's physical immortality, that each atom and cell of one's form enters a form of samadhi. And so basically it's taking the physical body into the eternal spirit. It's fusing or melding these two. So I can't really say too much about that. Maybe John can speak a little bit more about that at some point. But anyway, he belonged to the ancient traditions of the Nath. So Boganathar, Kalangi Nathar. And these are the 9 siddhas tracing their tradition back to Lord Shiva. So it's a Shiva lineage. And when Kalangi Nath decided to enter into samadhi seclusion for 3,000 years, Boganathar took over his mission in China. Now, if you remember, Thirumalar also went into a meditative state for 3,000 years and wrote the 3,000 verses. He came out once a year and wrote down 1 verse. So you have that. So there may be something significant about that 3,000 year period of meditation or whatever they're doing during that time when they're not actively moving around on earth. So to facilitate this, and this is where it comes into this Halloween day, to facilitate taking over this mission, Boganathar transmigrated his vital body into a deceased Chinese man. So he left his physical body somewhere and using his vital body, entered the body of this deceased Chinese man and resurrected it and overcame the limits of this body and its degenerative tendencies. And this term, degenerative tendencies, it reminds me of something I believe Heike was just saying about the incorruptibles. They somehow manipulated the degenerative tendencies in their bodies. So Boganathar overcame the limits of this body and its degenerative tendencies and prolonged its life with the use of specialized herbal formulas, the golden pill that he learned to make, right? So he had to prolong the life of the body long enough for the effects of Kriya, Kundalini, Pranayama, and related techniques to bring about this Saruba Samadhi. And then Boganathar lived 12,000 years in China. And there's more to the story because after healing all the degenerative diseases, he also taught what later became the Taoist healing arts and was revived as traditional Chinese medicine. Although today in traditional Chinese medicine, the way it's practiced now, it's a combination of Western medicine and the traditional Chinese medicines. But here we're talking about the pure traditional Chinese Taoist healing arts, which would have been more utilizing more of our personal, they didn't have the technology that we use today, without the technologies of today, using what's more innate and natural within us to achieve. So this fascinates me. And I'd like to invite John, if you can clear up anything about Samadhi and Saruba Samadhi, I would really appreciate that.
I don't know if I can clear it up, but I started to contemplate the answer that I had gave you, and where I still resonate with it. I started thinking that how the atoms and the cells of our body are already probably more in a state of samadhi all the time naturally. And that, so I would see Sorupa Samadhi as the thoughts becoming enraptured in the bliss of the life force of the cells and atoms, and that's what allows for that experience to take place. And then just related to the Siddha tradition that you were talking about the 9 Siddhas, or the 9 Naths, and though they make up like the first 9 Siddhas of the 84 Mahasiddhas of the Tibetan tradition, and the Naths are the first 9 in this tradition, and then they have a whole bunch more, and they're very similar to the incorruptibles in that they all experience some type of anomaly at their disappearance or at their departure time, whether it's rainbow body or diamond body, or leaving a body as a relic behind that is incorruptible, and or they only leave their hair and nails behind. Many different weird stories. But the interesting thing about them is that they're of a tantric style, and so that their practice is of purity, is unto the pure all things are pure, and which is a verse from the Bible, Titus. And so it is, their style is more of whatever it is that you do, let that be your sadhana. Let that, if you're a writer of books, if you're a watcher of TV, if you're a doer of nothing, let that be your sadhana, and do it to your full intensity. And that can lead to that rainbow body. I pulled this one out because this is so much related to the saints who raised the dead. I would say it's a next one to check into after that. It's called Rainbow Body and Resurrection, Spiritual Attainment, the Dissolution of the Material Body in the Case of Kenpo Acho. And this one gets into the similarities and the distinctions between the rainbow body resurrection and the resurrection of Jesus Christos, Yeshua, Meshiach, or Jesus Christ. And so these attainments they're natural. They are the natural state of our soul, actually. It's not even an attainment. It's not even an attainment. It's nothing to attain. It's who we are. And it's really about just breathing and burning out the stuff that is not that's not Siddha, that's not the same. And how do we burn it out? Well, I think we got that. We all have the practices, the spiritual purification practices.
Yeah, and there's so much more coming. There's just so much more coming, and I'm looking forward to this exploration in a tremendous way. But I love what you just said, that it is the natural way, and we need to get out of that way. And as Leonard said, for 5,000 years, we've been living the death dream.
And that is true for many of the seers, that they say that we are coming out of the dark ages. I mean, Rudolf Steiner, he says it will take us a few more 100 years. So he's not that optimistic, you know, that the mass consciousness will reach it very soon. But it's in all the teachings, you know, it is like the progression of humanity. Where will we go if we keep evolving our love, our humanness, our care for each other, our gratitude, and these are part of the practices that we are doing on our spiritual path. So if we keep practicing mind purification with gratitude, with love, with compassion, if we keep practicing purity in the physical body with what we eat, what we put out, because we are sending out a vibration. And something about Anneliese Garin, I'm reading one book and of her, and it's not Ye Are Gods, it's To the Glory of God, I think it's the title of it. But she's basically saying that when we have negative thoughts and feelings, I mean, we've all heard that, and we are sending it out. It is like a double-sided sword, and the negativity comes back to us. So we've all sent out negativity. So all our minds are going, I think, I mean, that included Leonard and anybody, you know, sometimes we have fears, we have angers, we have attachments. And so when we send that out actually towards somebody, the more power comes back in that same way to us. And the two ways of getting out of it that Anneliese Garin very profoundly describes in this beautiful book. She's written 7 books or something, but is that to break that cycle of evil or unhappiness or whatever, one is that you can yourself repent and say, I'm sorry, I went crazy in my thoughts. But the other, and she describes it so beautiful, you know, that really got to me, is that when the person to whom this energy was directed actually sends love back. And that's what I loved about Leonard. You know, he was always sending out that love no matter what people did.
Yes.
And so if we can break that actually, and if the person who sent out the negativity receives that love from the person who sends that back to him, and if you can receive that, that's also instantly dissolving that negativity. So we have 2 ways of basically healing our relationships. If somebody sends something negative, for us, first of all, that we are repenting and saying sorry. I want to change. I don't want to hurt anybody, and sending love and gratitude. But the other way is actually opening ourselves to the saintly attitude that somebody sends it to us and says, I don't take your negativity, but I don't send you that same energy back, which usually people do, you know, tit for tat, they, you know, you send it back. But if we can send love back to somebody who attacks us or says something or we feel offended by, and that person actually receives the love, that produces a profound healing. And so humanity is on that path for a new future. And that includes, for me, totally, it includes the physical body. And okay, Leonard was way ahead of his time, and he had his own story, and it is in our destiny. And I think that's why I love physical immortality, and to promote that more is because I think it's humanity's future. And so that's what I feel with all of you here too, that we have that vision, that greater vision, and we might not achieve it as a mass consciousness within the next 100 years. I don't know, but maybe we do. It depends on how fast we can transform.
Beautiful. I guess I'm reminded of what someone had read earlier today about the vibration changing, so that, you know, we shift so much that we are almost invisible or do not see that which is not of resonating. We're not attracting, we're not living, we're living almost in a different dimension, even though we're right beside each other. And this book, The Celestine Prophecy, in that story, talked about that. That was in that story. That's how they saw that. Change your mind, and you're basically the dangerous, the violence in the world. They don't see you, the violent. They walk right by you. They don't see you, so that you are safer in the world the more you purify your vibration, your mind, the vibration of your mind, your thoughts, the frequency. So,
and if you see them, then if you stay pure, then it can't hurt you, because you're just sending out that love, and that is like a block to that negativity. You're just sending out love and compassion.
Right. Yes.
There's a really beautiful story of that in the book series, The Life and Teachings of the Masters of the Far East, where they are traveling in the Himalayas. Then a storm is coming, and it's a team of scientists that go to the Himalayas to see if there really actually are immortals. And they end up documenting it the whole way scientifically, and then sharing their stories and experiences, finding out slowly that they have been traveling there with their guide, who's an immortal all along. And there's a story in there where they're traveling in the Himalayas, and this huge storm comes by, but they're in a bubble, basically completely protected from the storm. There's also a horde of bad guys running through, like, that have been raiding the local villages, and they also just run right past them. They don't even see them. So that's one of the experiences shared in those series. There's many beautiful stories in that book series, and it's good to read it multiple times and soak it into your consciousness, to really ingrain these thoughts and what's possible. Because I think that we live in a society that's so tightly knit and boxed in around what's okay and what's not okay, and what's possible and what's not possible. So really working on breaking free from those sticky thought structures and thought forms. Yeah.
and the materialistic time that we're in, the denial of these kinds of experiences is everywhere. You know, that's what science promotes usually. I mean, there is a transformation going on, but it is that materialistic view that if you don't see ghosts or spirits, they don't exist. And so we have to break this materialistic view that we open to another world which is there and we can communicate with. And so all saints, and you know, they are there, angels are there, and we just have to open our mind to perceive this world, because only through that world will come the physical immortality. If we enter this higher realms in our mind and in our thinking, then we can transform the physical body. We will not do that in the materialistic view or with the materialistic means that we have. Only by connecting to the higher power can we achieve physical immortality, levitation, mastery, or whatever we want.
Yeah, I want to thank you. I want to go back to what you were talking about in the Celestine prophecy. I don't know if you remember in the next book, in the Ninth Insight, it had something that blew my mind, and that was when they were facing the enemy, it was the good guys, or theoretically the good guys versus the bad guys, and that was a paradigm in which they were seeing it. But what happened was that he was sending light to these people that they saw as the enemies, but it didn't work, because what they did where they were othering, it was, I am the good guy and I'm sending energy to the bad guy. And so what happened was when they included everyone in the circle, when they opened everyone with open arms and thought we are the children of the light, and they took in the light, then everyone was transformed and they were safe. And I love that, moving that from I am sending you light because you're doing something to harm, that, you know, that we're all in this together and we all receive the light.
Beautiful.
Thank you, Anne. I love that.
Would you like to share anything, Keith? I understood that. Are you?
I just wanted to say thank you. You know, I have not been able to participate in this group much because it's on an older email, and I just happened to see it before I was going to sleep last night that you were meeting. So I got up, and it was completely unplanned. That's why I don't have my costume. Otherwise, I would have participated. It's just been extremely wonderful for me to just have lots of fond memories come up of Leonard, you know, and all the times that I've had listening to everyone's shares and just all the information. So I just kind of liked a lot of the different Facebook groups, and I'll do my best to try to participate. You mentioned Leonard's birthday. Is that going to be next Sunday?
No, it's on the 15th of November, and it is actually a Monday. We have a German meeting on Sunday night, but we will have 2 English meetings and a Spanish meeting on the Monday. So one meeting is 9 a.m. Central European time, which is 3 New York time. So that's not that good, but it's good for Australian people, for Indian people. So that's why we're doing this. And then we have another one at 6, and we had a little confusion today because we have a time change last night, but then we will all have changed time, and it will be 12 noon again for Virginia time. And there, many of you hopefully are back here, and it will be, as I said before, the physical immortality topic in more detail. So, I mean, this is part of it, and there will be a lot more. We will talk about astral travel and everything. I think that might be in the morning meeting though, but
that's fine. No, that sounds great. I'm actually on, and I was in California, you know, and I would visit Leonard in Chico. That was I met him in 1990, and I spent a lot of time with him those first few years, really, really brilliantly. And I did want to just share one story because it kind of just, it came up for me was, you know, when I first found out about rebirthing through one of my spiritual teachers. They told me to go study with Leonard, and I called him on the phone, and he's like, have you ever done rebirthing before? I said, no. And he said, well, go get 10 sessions and call me back. And he hung up. I mean, that was my first experience with Leonard on the phone. I'm like, okay. So I found somebody in my area, and I went and got my 10 sessions, and then I'm like, all happy. And I'm like, okay. I called him up. I got my 10 sessions, and he's like, okay, I'm in Chico, come see me. So I went to him, and it was like a Friday morning. I took the day off. I was living in the Bay Area, and I went up there, and I must have gotten there, I don't know, about 11 o'clock in the morning. And it was at the little house that he had there in Chico that was not out at the 5 acres, but just in town, because he met me there first, I'm sure, to check my energy. Now I know, but, and there was nobody there. I knocked on the door. Finally, Leonard came, and, I met him, and I introduced myself. And for the first hour, I don't think we said 2 words. He didn't talk, so I didn't talk. We just breathed together. We just sat there. I was like waiting for him, and then finally, he asked me a question, and then we proceeded that first time to talk probably till about 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock that night. And it was just he and I. And so for me, it was an incredible experience of being present with someone for that long, feeling his presence, and it drew out my presenceness. And as we got into it, and I basically got, of course, a discourse on everything that was important to Leonard, at that point. And he asked me all of the things. So it was, that was the beginning of many, many weekends that I would go up and spend up there. And I never got that much time with him ever again. We'd always have dinners and times like that again. And I look back on it really fondly, wishing I did take a lot of it in, but it was so much information. It's, at one sitting, it was, it was hard. So then, of course, I read everything, and I had questions better. But that was kind of, I think we've all had experiences with Leonard like that, where he was just so generous with his time when he was, whatever it was, when you were there, you were the most important, person, unless it was a big other kind of training that was going on. And then he could be very, of course, aloof, and very hard to get close. And so anyway, I just want to thank you, each of you, for all of what you do. And I want to get reconnected again. I've been doing rebirthing, and I still do sessions. I've been doing it for over 30 years. There have been periods of my life where I have depended on it for my sole income, and fortunately now I don't have to. So I get to choose to just do it, and find the right clients find me. And that's the way I like it. And it's just really good to connect with each of you and hear all of your stories. So thank you for allowing me to be here, and I'll do my best to join you in the future.
Thank you. It's wonderful to have you here.
Love and blessings.
Thank you.
Om Namah Shivaya.
Om Namah Shivaya.
Shall we hop into Raised from the Dead?
Yes.
Feels like a good way to continue. I think that my son is going to be here fairly soon, so that might be a good point to bring in the book, but I'm having a hard time communicating with them. So we'll go with the flow there. This is a book written by Father Albert J. Herbert Jr. He is a Catholic priest. And I forget which order he was from. He passed away in 2003, but he wrote this book and published it in the 80s, I believe. It's published by Tan Books. They do a lot of really fascinating books on the Catholic style of physical immortality and the saints and the miracles. And Leonard loved to share stories from this book. He was really fascinated with it. One thing that I thought was funny is that he pointed out that, can you imagine living in a time where it's common and normal for people to be raising the dead, for saints and spiritual ascetics to be performing miracles and healings, visible healings of crippled people or deaf and blind, and where it's just these things happen and you can travel and go see these saints. And the stories are really of resurrections are quite impressive and fun and creative. But it's so outside of our thinking in mainstream now. We have embalming and cremation and, caskets far underground. And it's very clean and sanitized. So stories like this would be hard to come about. And I guess that they're kind of sanctifying that Jesus was the only one that could do that. But that is simply not true when you look at Catholic history of the saints. And what's interesting about this book is that he goes through and documents it. This story of this saint was documented in, what's the word I'm looking for? Credited by 300 people at this, and this bishop at this church at this time, and here's all the signatures in the book. So it's very he was very studious about that. Let's see, we lost Kira. She was going to read us a story of a saint that was beheaded and resurrected, but I think maybe I could step in and just read that a little bit if you guys want some story time.
So Kira's not coming back.
I have not seen. I think she maybe lost her internet connection in the jungle.
Oh,
unfortunately.
Yes. Where was she? Nicaragua.
Because I see she's unable to receive my messages. I could wait, and we could maybe Heike, if you wanted to read the story of.
I have a real live story of resurrection. Not out.
Oh well, can't beat that.
Years ago, I had a center, and we were renting, and we were thinking about getting a bigger place. And I went there, and the place that we went to was called the Happy Church. And I met this minister, and we became friends. And he was evangelical, but he was also metaphysical, and he was all over the place. And he told me that one time, one of the congregants died, and he was with him. And this congregant had 4 children, and he was with this guy, and he says, he cannot die. He has got 4 children. He is a good man. He cannot leave this earth. I command his spirit to come back here. You cannot die. You must come here. And the man came back to life.
Fantastic.
And I've also heard, and I can't remember the story of where it was, but it was in some book about the natives that had the Christian ministers come through, and they had told the story of resurrection. And the next time the Christian people came through, they said, that thing about resurrection really works. It is really good, because we've been able to save a lot of people through that concept. We've been able to raise a lot of people that would have died. And, thank you so much for letting us know that we could do that.
Amazing.
Are you leaving?
Don, are you needing to leave us here? I see your notes in the. Thank you for coming today. It's really wonderful to feel your presence again and have you here. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
See you next time.
It was great. It was great to share with y'all. I really loved all the stories and all just the presence of the community. And thanks for keeping it going.
Thanks, John.
Yeah, it was lovely. We're gonna have to step out too. It's a good time for us to. But yeah, this was really wonderful to come into.
Great. Hi, Kali.
Nice meeting you.
Hi,
Danielle.
Princess.
Yeah. It's Kali Rose and Lily Kushmanda.
Hi,
beautiful.
Frankie today.
So nice to meet you.
Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween. I'm sorry Admar's not here. We'll try to get him later.
Yeah, we'll try it again. I'm
Okay.
sure we'll be wearing our costumes for weeks. So
yes,
we
will also
have a costume party again.
Every holiday it gets extended when you have children. It just goes on and on.
I know, until we finally put the Christmas books away, because we just can't keep it.
Yes. Thank you, Danielle. Great to see you here today. Have fun.
Bye.
Bye. Bye, Kali.
You want to press the button on that? Okay. Oh, go ahead, Lily. If this was the red one.
Bye, Lily.
Bye.
Bye.
It's the red one right there. You got it? Yep, I know the big red one.
Yeah, I like yeah, I can read the story, but I also, I mean, when you were talking about these times, it's difficult to come across the healing. I mean, Leonard also had the story where in Spain, where they had a 3-week a month-long training, and when they all went out to a restaurant, and then an elderly man fell down and he died of a heart attack, and then they all stood around, 10 people stood around and were breathing. And actually one of the people in the group was a medical doctor, and she had, one other doctor had declared him dead, and when they were standing there and breathing, he came back. And so they put him in the ambulance, brought him to the hospital, and this one doctor from the group, she actually kept following up what happened to him, and he lived for another 10 years or something.
Wow. Amazing.
So,
I remember that story, Leonard telling that.
Yeah, so there is practical stories. And I also like to mention Bruno Grolning. I don't know if you heard about him. He was a healer till 1959. He died in 1959. But what happened to him was German authority, materialistic authority, when he was healing people, and it was after the war, like in the late 40s, early 50s, and thousands of people came to him, he would just stand on the balcony and he would command people in the wheelchair, stand up. And the people were standing up and they were throwing their sticks away. And it was after the war, so much suffering was happening in the country because, I mean, everything was bombed down, and people coming back from the war, and hunger and all these things. And so he would just speak to people. He had a big throat, and he said that's where his healing power was. I used to be part of this group and lead meditations, or the groups, the friends group, a friend circle in my house here, actually. And he had power, and he was transmitting it through his throat. And he could command and say, stand up and you are healed and you can do it. And he got, they pulled him to court and they convicted him that he was healing without permission. He wasn't a medical doctor, and he wasn't a health practitioner. And that's what they charged him with, that he was healing without permission. I mean, it's not that long ago. I mean, I was born in 58, so it's in my lifetime, you know, that these people exist. But what do we do with our scientific, materialistic thinking? We overlook it. So we have to keep telling these stories. We have to keep telling these stories that is an actual real ability and possibility that we have. And it's not, you know, it doesn't just happen random, but we can strengthen that. So I can read the resurrection miracles performed by Blessed Margaret of Costello.
Sure.
And
yeah.
so she is one of the saints in this book. And the blind and crippled wonder worker. In the Corinthians, it says, "It is sown in weakness, it shall rise in power." Margaret of Costello, also called Margaret of Mettola, after her birthplace, was born in 1287 in the castle of the nobleman Parisio and his wife Emilia at Mettola. But her father was not really noble. When his wife was with child, Parisio simply assumed that he would have a healthy son and heir. But the festivities planned to celebrate this joyful event were suddenly called off when the child was born a dreadfully deformed girl. She was unusually small, hunchback, facially deformed, her right leg was shorter than the left, and she was blind. Margaret's parents treated her very badly. They kept the child hidden from relatives and friends, and worse, from themselves. When she was 6 years old, her father walled her up in a cell next to a chapel hidden in a forest. 14 years later, her parents took her to a shrine of Città di Castello to pray for a cure. When she was not cured, Margaret's parents returned home without a word to their blind, crippled daughter, cruelly abandoning her, so they left her there. Left to roam the streets, Margaret became a beggar among beggars. She had always been a bright gold child and had profited from lessons of the castle chaplain. Left on her own at age 20, she became a holy young woman, blind but limping around to help others. On the day she became a Martelletta, a member of the Third Order of Penance of the, so she became a Dominican, and these are one of the orders, Dominicans, Franciscans, these are the orders that have a very, very serious spiritual purification practices. The blind Margaret knew about a dozen psalms by heart. The next morning, she knew all 150 psalms by heart. So she just, without reading them, she could learn them. She said the knowledge simply came to her. Despite her deformities, Margaret had always been kind and cheerful. She once made a profound impression on a group of prisoners when she was elevated some 20 inches off the ground in ecstatic prayer, and her poor face was transformed in beauty. She made true predictions about what would happen to various individuals. She cured a little girl who was dying and ended a roaring fire in the home where she lived by throwing her cloak down the stairs upon the flames. Margaret is also credited with having restored to life a man and 2 children. A little boy fell into a river and was drowned. When his body was recovered, the heartbroken mother prayed to Margaret, and the child came back to life. A woodsman was killed by bears. Hours later, his friends found his body horribly mangled. They carried it to his home. His wife and children gathered around the corpse and implored Margaret to plead with God for the restoration of their husband and father. And the man returned to life. A child fell from a high balcony on the street below and was killed. Through Margaret's intercession, he was brought back to life uninjured. When Margaret died at age 33 on April 13, when she was age 33 on April 13, 1320, the people at her funeral cried out that she was a saint and should have the privilege of being buried inside the church. The local prior saw the devotion as premature and unauthorized as yet, but the crowd was insistent. A girl, crippled, mute, and with a curvature of the spine, who was never been able to walk, was brought by her parents to the church. The parents with this helpless child pushed through the disputing crowd to Margaret's bier. There, they pleaded with a cripple who was a friend of God to have pity on the fellow cripple. Suddenly, there was an awed silence as the crowd stared at the left arm of Margaret. It was rising from her side. The arm reached over and touched the young crippled girl beside the bier. A moment later, the girl, who had never walked, rose to her feet unaided. The girl, who had been mute, looked around as if in a dream and then screamed, "I have been cured. I have been cured through Margaret." The one-time mute cripple threw herself into the arms of her father and mother, laughing and crying. Pandemonium broke out in the church. The prior needed nothing further. Margaret's body was buried in the vault of the church. Okay, I think that's, it goes a little bit longer, but so this is a wonderful book with gems of inspiration, and that this is something that is happening with pure devotion and real pure love that the saints actually have. And the Bruno Grolning Society, they're keeping record of all the healings. And because he was what is the word? He was sentenced because he was not healing. But they said it's not, he always said, it's not me who's healing. Usually the saints don't claim responsibility for it. They say it's God's healing power. It's God through us or as us healing.
Yes, I thought the story that you read, Heike, of Saint Margaret, right? It's Margaret, was so fascinating because she was a cripple, but upon her death, she became healed. In her state, her body turned into a state of perfection and health, which is so in dying, she was healed. So that was an interesting story. I have a story of St. Francis, which I think, most people are familiar with St. Francis of Assisi, but they don't know about his resurrections. And he was also a vegetarian. Well, maybe he was vegetarian. I don't know if he was vegan. So he had some really wonderful resurrection stories. Let me see if I can find where that starts. He resurrected a man that had been hung. Let's see, but I wanted to read. There was a drowned boy. So many people he resurrected, but also in his love for all creatures, the revivals of his pet trout, Antonella. He had a pet trout named Antonella and a pet lamb, Martinello. So St. Francis of Assisi had a tender spot in his heart for even the fierce wolf of Gubbio. Oh, I think that was a murderer. That was the story shared earlier. It's understandable how Francis of Paola, that's St. Francis, reacted when his innocent pet trout met with a sad fate. One day, Antonella was swimming about the pool like a good fish should. A visiting priest, helping with a religious service, saw him, caught him, took him home, and began to fry him. St. Francis missed the trout, and either realizing naturally or else having superior knowledge of what had happened, he sent one of his religious to get it back. So one of his students or devotees. When the priest heard this request from the hermit sent by Francis, he was annoyed. He threw the cooked trout on the ground, the impact shattering it into several pieces. When the hermit returned to St. Francis with the broken pieces, Francis placed them in the pool and prayed. Antonella, in the name of charity, returned to life. The trout at once became whole again and happily began to swim about the pool. Friars and workers witnessed the miracles. Let's see. Later at Bormes, as a guest in the home of the governor, Francis restored to life a cooked fish, which his host had prepared for him, not realizing that Francis would hold himself to his very limited personal diet. I mean, can you imagine in the 1600s what it was like to be a vegetarian? Pretty tough, especially if you have pets that are considered edible. On another occasion, from nothing but bones and fleece left and thrown into an oven, St. Francis called back to life his pet lamb, Martinello, which had been recently roasted and eaten by someone nearby. So I thought it was wonderful that he resurrected his pets. that had actually been eaten. All he needed was the fleece and bones. Do you want to say hi to Heike and Peace and a few other friends? Okay, come here. Danielle left already, but that's all right. We'll say hi to them later.
Adama.
Adama, hey! Woo,
Oh, hi, baby
you're
dragon.
having wings too.
Irene is not here, but that's Heike. There's Heike with her hat, and there's Peace with her hat.
Yeah.
And this is.
You like my hat? I like your wings, Adamar.
There was brown bear.
There was
Brown bear is also there. Oh, wow.
We're having a little party today.
Okay. No brown bear.
With your gnome and brown bear. Well, we'll say hi more later when we get Danielle back and Callie and Lily, okay? Yeah. You want to go with Papa?
No.
Okay. Well, I'll see you in a little bit. Right there. So this book is, it's available on Kindle, and I saw that they also have it, I think, in print through, you can get it like at Target. It's super accessible. I have a few used copies. If you want one of the original in print, just
and
contact
the title
me.
changed from Raised from the Dead to Saints Who Raise, I think, the Dead. So
Okay, that's the current, the current reprinting. Saints Who Raised the Dead.
Saints
by Father.
Who Raised, yeah.
Saints Who Raised the Dead by Father Albert Herbert Jr.
So I'd like to share one from the book. That is one that Leonard read, and it's about St. Paul of the Cross. But the reason why I'd like to share this is because this is one of my earlier times at the training center. Well, I was actually staying at the Dooney on Leonard's property, but I would go with him when he would go to the training center. And I was really struggling in my head, and I hadn't even said it out loud, but going over about again back and forth about with these thought, like you can't unfry an egg. You can't unfry an egg. There are certain things, they're done. You can't go back and change them. And over the course of the seminar, Leonard pulls this book out and he starts reading about St. Paul of the Cross. And I will read from it. On another occasion, the saint was a guest at the house of Signori Gaffridi, where a hen was served for dinner. St. Paul said, "You have done wrong to kill that poor animal because her eggs, she was the support of a poor woman to whom she belonged. Let us do an act of charity. Open that window." And then he blessed the hen, already cooked as it was, in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Ghost. He had hardly pronounced the words when the hen returned to life, was covered with feathers, took wing, and went off screaming out the window to the house of the poor mistress from whom she had been stolen by the man who sold her. The miracle was recorded on oath, by an eyewitness. St. Paul of the Cross worked similar wonders in other places. So there I was in this kind of curmudgeon-y mood, about how you can't unfry an egg. And then Leonard pulled this story out, and I just laughed out loud, as I often did with Leonard. And it totally shifted my mind, my mental state. And I just never even thought about whether or not you could unfry an egg. Again, maybe when I know how, it'll be easy.
Fantastic.
So, it was a very personal and joyful memory with Len. So.
And I think that was Leonard's big, he had contributions on so many different levels. Not just the rebirthing breath work, which in itself gives us access to the higher realms and places and higher consciousness, but also, opening our mind to possibilities. And then the prosperity work and the printing money and all the other things. So he was seeing life from a higher perspective. And I organized a talk here in my little town in Wipperfürth, and I said to Leonard, please do not talk about physical immortality.
Oh, that was a mistake.
Because I thought, wow, I mean, this is 20,000 people and it's very Catholic and very politically backwards and everything. And I thought, uh-oh. And so what did he do? He talked the whole evening about physical immortality. But he could do things, he was so daring and so sure in himself that he could produce these events and stories that, the people who were there, they could understand it usually. I mean, I've seen also a talk with 100 people where it went really bad and they all attacked him for just his stupid stories about the immortal yogi masters. So it depended also on the energy of the group. But in that talk, he was just sitting on stage and letting everybody throw their hate or their anger at him for being so ridiculous. And he just sat there and he was sending out love. So I saw him actually really practicing sending that love back to people that would attack him. And that was a very powerful experience, but he was pretty wiped out afterwards and not feeling very good. And it took him time to recover from it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Heike.
I have one more thing, and which is human levitation. And this is also, there's actually, the subtitle is A True History and a How-To Guide. I mean, I was reading the how-to guide yesterday, and basically it is years of practice. So it is not like an instant that you can get that, but it's connecting with your breath. One of the techniques is through the breathing, actually. And this book has different sections that either people raised from the ground by their devotion and their love for God. So that's actually a majority of the stories in here, that people were in awe and enthusiasm and gratitude for the divine power. And that made them so light and so pure that they could lift up the ground, or that would lift them up without wanting to. It would just make them so one with spirit that they lifted up. But there's also stories in here where people can actually do that also on a secular level, that without the devotional part. But again, let's get inspired. And so Leonard was inspiring the world, and now we are doing the same, and we keep going in his tradition. And I'm happy that we're doing that here in together.
Beautiful. As witches.
As witches.
We're a collection of witches here.
We're back, baby.
On Halloween. Yes. Well, thank you. I think that kind of covered it for everything we wanted to, unless anyone else has anything they'd like to add before I think we're going to leave with a wonderful story from Glenn Smiley. He had a little story time that I think we can try to
I make you the host.
Live stream it. Yeah, I'll try live streaming it here. You let me know if it works. If I can do that. But is there anything else anyone would like to say before we go on with our Anne? Yes.
When we're talking about the raising from the dead, also Leonard looked at healing a lot. And so there's so many different forms of healing. It's not just the radical, like someone comes to life, but it's also the progressive healing that we have. For example, when someone does visualization and they're healed of cancer, those kinds of things. He also talked about the teeth. I don't know if y'all remember when he got into the healer in Florida and who could turn the fillings into gold. So I just want to mention, that that not everything is instant, that we can give honor to the things that are progressive and more long term. And then the other thing that I'd like to say and give thanks for is that in reading these books, now I've done a lot of work on myself. I mean, my gosh, I'm like the poster child for working on myself, as I'm sure you are too. And I've always had a lot of feelings of feeling illegitimate. My parents were divorced when I was 2. That was really unusual in the 40s when we had parents divorced at 2. But in reading that story about the saint that was blind and crippled, I had the realization that really most of the movers and the shakers were, to society, they were all illegitimate. And I thought, that is a story I can retell in a different way. And so I was really grateful to hear the stories, especially the one about Margaret, because she did not fit in. I mean, today, a lot of what, our kind of biological materialism, if you would call it, is the beautiful people. We look for the beautiful people. And she, was crippled and blind and probably dirty and smelly and everything else at one point. And it was just a real healing story for me. So thank you.
Nice. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, well, and there's phenomenal things that Leonard spoke of happening in rebirthing sessions of one person dematerialized and the rebirther had to sit and hold space for them to come back, trusting that they would rematerialize. And there's some really wonderful stories.
Yeah,
and
Leonard was rebirthing me one time, and he said that I was dematerializing and rematerializing.
Well, maybe it was you that he was telling the story about. That could be.
Well, I don't think I went all the way, but he just said that I was getting thin. I'd totally forgotten about that.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I certainly had sessions where I felt that, if I, that ascension is totally here and possible. I felt that I could have ascended or dematerialized. I felt so much light, and so in the light, so much in my light body. Definitely have had those experiences. So there's many avenues and experiences beyond the kind of hypnotic state that mass media and the general population can really get trapped in. So fun to explore that with you and have this community, spiritual community. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. So I make you the host.
All right, we'll end with this. So Glenn Smiley, for those of you who don't know him, he's a longtime rebirther. He was there, I think, kind of in the beginning, right, at Campbell Hot Springs, and
Rebirth America tour.
He did the Rebirth America tour, which he shared about in the Leonard Orr tribute, which we have on our YouTube channel. And he had the aliveness. I don't know, is he still doing the aliveness trainings?
Yeah, he's still.
So. Okay, so this story is a bedtime story that he would tell at the end of the day of his training. He shared with me, they would all gather in their pajamas and eat ice cream. He'd make brownies and they'd eat ice cream and brownies, and they'd sit down and tell a story in their pajamas. So how do I become host, Heike? I didn't see a little invite. Host. I am host already. Okay. Oh, I see. I've got share screen. So let me find where I put this video, and then I will share.
Well, and we can say goodbye. Are we saying goodbye before we go?
Yes, I think we shall. Yeah, and we'll leave you all with this little bedtime story to tuck you in for Halloween night if you're watching this later. Yes. So thank you everyone for joining us today. Anything else, Heike or Peace, that you want to share?
Now it's wonderful to inspire each other, and thank you, everybody.
Yes. Happy Halloween and happy mischief and thinning of the veils and connecting with ancestors and all of that goodness and richness that's unseen and also seen. Okay.
That should be.
Om Namah Shivaya.
Om Namah Shivaya.
Om Namah Shivaya.
Right. Can you see the video here?
Ah, there we go.
Okay.
I'm going to mute myself and
You have to share the sound too, Sarah. When you put it on, there is a button that you have to share the sound on your screen.
Okay. Where am I?
There, when you start sharing, it says share sound. Maybe you have to go back. I don't know.
Advanced sharing options.
Maybe go.
I'll stop sharing and I'll try.
I think did you just unmute yourself?
I did unmute myself. I'm just trying to find where it, computer audio. Well, I want to have audio and this. Is it selected now? Oh dear. Well, Heike, if I send it back to you, can you?
Well, start sharing again your screen, and then when you press on start sharing, then it also has in the left corner down a button that says share sound.
You can see my screen now?
Yeah.
I don't see a button anywhere that says share sound. Is it working now?
No. No, it's when you click on the button that you want to share your screen, that's when you have to click it, usually.
Yeah, I'm not getting it. It's not showing me a button for that. And I don't know if it's because I'm on a Mac or share screen, share sound.
Yeah.
Got it. Sarah and technology. Okay, it's not going to let me do it. Something about I don't have to share your computer audio. Please install the Zoom audio device. Oh, what is my password?
Where is the video? I think I only have it on WhatsApp, right?
It's on YouTube.
Oh, okay.
And we could even just post it in the comments below.
Okay, yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that, guys. It's something on my computer isn't letting me.
We will share the link after on as a comment, right?
Okay, yeah, we'll put it in the comments. Sorry about that. All right then.
Okay, thank you everybody watching on Facebook and everybody live here with us. We are sending love and appreciation, and thank you everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, Heike. Thank you all for attending. Bye.
Bye.
Are you going to put it in the chat or not? Because I put the link in the chat. Or are you going to send it out by email?
I'm going to put it on the Facebook group. I can also put the link here in the chat for you if you're not on Facebook.
I am. That's fine.
You are? Okay. All right.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Namah Shivaya.
Om Namah Shivaya.
Namah Shivaya.